Hi, this is Mana. Let's talk about the transformation functions on Clip Studio Paint. There's quite a lot of them, though some of them sounds redundant. It still depends on what you will see the use of them. Okay, so let's start. I'll be using Clip Studio Paint Pro. This is exactly the same with the X version. Okay, so what is transform function? Transform functions are part of the editing section of CSP. Whatever layer or a selection of an image you have, this will move and/or will transform your selection using your preferred function. The different transform functions are scale rotate, a separate scale and a separate rotate, free transform, skew, distort, perspective, flip horizontal, flip vertical, and lastly is mesh transform. Okay, so where to see this? You can find the transform functions on edit, transform, and the types of transform functions are all in here. Or you can click this icon here above. It is the shortcut for scale rotate transformation, but when you look here at the tool property, on mode, click here. Here's the other transform functions. So how to use them? You can use them by two ways. First, select your layer, then go to edit, transform. For example, let's choose scale rotate, and now the whole image is available to be transformed. The second way is to get your selection tool. For example, let's go with lasso and just grab an area, and now we go to edit, transform, scale and rotate, and only that part will be available for transformation. Okay, so now let's talk about transformation settings, history, and bounding box. Before we go to the different transform functions, please take note that choosing whichever one of these will give you access to the transformation settings. For example, keep your eyes here at the tool property or at lasso. Once we go to edit, transform, choose whatever you want. And look here, the tool property will change to the transformation settings. And you can see here the different types: scale rotate, a separate, scale and rotate, free transform, distort, skew, and perspective. You can change the transformation here if you want to. There's also some settings here that you can alter depending on what you need. There's keep aspect ratio, image interpolation, etc. Another thing, if you're currently on a transformation function and you want to change that, you can right click outside of the canvas and you'll see the other transformation functions here. Okay, please take note, you will get a separate history on your transformation. Look at my history tab. Once you've selected your transformation, the history changes to the same transformation you choose, and so whatever edit you made here will be recorded, so you can go back to if you mess up. And finally, once you've chosen a transformation, whatever the shape of your selection, be it a square, rectangle, circle, or a lasso selection, you'll have this blue box. This is called a bounding box. This is like the transformation box. Everything on our transformation settings is doable here on the bounding box. Okay? Alright, so now let's go to the different transform functions. First off, we have scale and rotate, and also a separate scale and a separate rotate. Okay, these three are self-explanatory. You can rotate and scale using these functions. We'll use the first one for explaining these three. You can scale and rotate on the transformation settings here on the side. Use the sliders here. There's for scale, height and width, and one for rotate angle. Or you can grab these handles on the bounding box, which are more practical. If you want to scale, grab on one of the handles. Your mouse will change to a double-ended straight arrow. If you want to rotate, get out of the bounding box and you get a curved double-ended arrows. Then you just click and rotate. Okay, so let's go on scale first. Grabbing one of these handles will resize your image, but as you can see here, I'm not grabbing my shift, but it's resizing according to its aspect ratio or it's keeping its original shape. If you want to scale freely, deselect the keep aspect ratio on the transformation settings here on the side, and now when you scale, you can now move it freely. Again, we deselect the keep aspect ratio, but if you still hold on to shift, you'll be able to scale again depending on the aspect ratio. Hold Alt and drag, and it will scale up or down depending on the position of the anchor point. If your keep aspect ratio is not checked and you want to scale while maintaining the original shape, hold on to Alt plus Shift, or check the keep aspect ratio, then hold Alt and just scale up or down. Okay, now let's go to rotate. Get out of the bounding box and you will get this curved arrow that you can click and drag to rotate your image selection. Hold Shift and rotate so you can go on 45 degrees. You can change the pivot or the anchor point to change the center of rotation. For example, moving the anchor point at the upper left corner, if we rotate that, it rotates from that point because that point becomes its joint or the center of rotation. If you hold Ctrl and grab one of the handles, you can freely transform the image. Okay, so where to use this, or where do I use this? I use this when I'm sketching. For example, on here, I need a quick resizing of something, maybe the eyes or the chin. Just grab a lasso and click this icon above for the scale rotate transformation shortcut, and I just scale up or down. Sometimes I rotate if needed. Okay, sometimes I also use this when I mess up an illustration for a quick fix. Okay, so look here. This is an old drawing from June 2018. The issue here is the body is quite small. Okay, so first I grab a selection tool, lasso subtool, then I grab the whole lower area. I'm also going to grab this area under her chest. So now I'm going to cut and paste this because the scaling that I have in mind will be quite big and I don't think I'll be able to control it properly, so we cut and paste. Now the lower area is on another layer. We can now scale rotate, so click here. I make sure I didn't check the keep aspect ratio so that I can scale this freely. I'm going to drag this anchor point to the upper area so that that area won't move too much. Now we scale this up, Alt plus Shift to scale according to the anchor point. I keep my eyes here on this area on the left. The right area can be easily remedied or redrawn. This left area here isn't. Okay, now I stretch this to make her body longer. Now pay attention here on this. Move this up using your arrow up key on your keyboard. It doesn't have to be perfect, we can just redraw the missing parts. Okay, so let's fix this area right here. Get your lasso tool. Let's grab this area. Click on scale rotate. Move the anchor point to the lower end of the selection so that it won't move so much. Now we grab the middle center handle. Click, Control, and just drag. If you don't hold the control on your keyboard, you won't be able to move this freely. Okay, again, hold Control, then move. It doesn't have to be perfect, we can just redraw this, okay? When you're done, just click OK or hit Enter on your keyboard. We can now merge these two layers since we're done. Now we redraw the missing parts. You can redraw on this layer to fix the drawing, or you can make a new raster layer, or click Ctrl Shift plus N on your keyboard. Make sure it's below your character layer and grab your brush, preferably a pen, so that it's sharp. Get your color and base out the missing parts. We can do some shading as well. make sure you click on Keep Transparent Pixels or lock the alpha channels. Get your airbrush and just fill out the shading. And that's it. This is before and this is after. I draw such happy faces around 2018 and now my drawings are all on emo face. So next is free transform, but let's skip that for a while and go back here when we're done with the others. So the next is Distort. Holding one of the handles, distort or transform the image selected based on the position of the handle and the guideline. For example, let's grab this upper left handle and drag it down. The image gets distorted by the handle. It's like this handle is grabbing this area alone and pulling it. Okay, so what do I mean when I say guideline? The distortion will only follow the guideline, which is the bounding box. You cannot pull this handle further inside or outside the bounding box. Distortion will only be on this bounding box. Even if you choose lasso or circle selection, you'll get a bounding box. If you hold Control when moving the handles, you can scale the selection, Control plus Shift if you want to scale while keeping the original shape or the aspect ratio. So where do I use Distort? I usually combine this with perspective, so let's talk later there on the perspective area example, okay? Next up, let's go to Skew. Skew transform the selection based on alignment or the guideline. The same as Distort, if we grab this upper left handle and drag it down, the whole area right here gets drawn down as well with the handle, making the image skew, okay? What's happening is that this follows the alignment of the guideline. Our guide is the line here, so we pull this one, everyone here goes down too. We drag this to the right, everyone here on the right goes to the right as well, okay? But the idea here is the transformation will look skew or will look tilted. So where do I use skew transformation? I sometimes use this when I do animation warping. So first off, choose your scene, go to File, Import, Create File Object, get your animation clip file. This is an animation, so we need our timeline. Make a new timeline, then let's hit play so you can see that this still moves. Okay, so now let's go to Operation Tool. Under Object Subtool, on the Tool property, look for Mode, change it to Skew, and just adjust the animation. And when you hit play, it still moves. Okay, so now let's go to Perspective. Perspective lets you transform even the opposite corner of the selection, dragging it to the opposite direction. For example, again on the upper left handle, if we now drag this down, even the opposite corner goes up, which is the opposite direction. If we go up, the other side goes down, and this creates a perspective-like transformation. Okay, so where do I use the perspective transform function? I don't use this on its own. I mix this with Distort or sometimes with free transform. I also use this for animation warping. For example, this magic circle or this circle animation. So I just make a new canvas. Let's insert our animation file. Go to File, Import, Create File Object. Look for circle animation. Then I just make a new timeline that matches the animation file. Then go back to the animated circle. Make sure you're on Operation Tool, Object Subtool, on the Tool property. Look for Mode, and just warp our animation or our animated circle using Perspective and Distort. Perspective and Distort creates a much more perspective vibe than Skew alone. Of course, this depends on your preference, or you can combine this. Doesn't really matter. When you make a mistake, you can just go back on the History tab. And now when you hit play, it's now angled and it still moves. Okay. Okay, so now let's go back here to the free transform. Free transform is my most used transformation function. You can do everything here. You can rotate, scale, distort, skew, and even make perspectives. Okay, so where do I use the free transform? Sometimes I use this to make drop shadows. So for this example, I'll be using an already finished drawing. The character and the background are separated. Get your character and duplicate that. Hide the top image and we'll work on the one that's on the bottom. Let's lock the alpha channels or keep transparent pixels. Now get your brush of choice, preferably a pen, so it's sharp. Now get a shadow color. I'm going gray and just paint the whole bottom duplicate as gray. And then we turn the visibility of the top duplicated image. Now make sure you're at the bottom image. Let's hit this shortcut, change to free transform, and just angle our duplicate like a shadow, grabbing the handles and dragging them down. Notice the overlapping shadow on the feet. That's okay, we will erase that later. When you're satisfied with your shadow, just hit enter or click OK on the transformation settings. Okay, now we adjust the drop shadow. I use mask so I don't lose the original drop shadow. Just click the mask icon, get your eraser and erase the things that you don't need. I actually want the shadow to be gradient, so let's go to gradient tool, scroll down and look for gradient erase. Now from the upper part of the shadow, click and drag it to the middle. And there we go. So now it's gradient. Let's look here at the edges of the shadow. It's too sharp, so let's blur that. Go to filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Maybe around 10% below is enough. Click OK when you're done. And that's it. We now have a drop shadow. Another uses of free transform is warping stock footage or animation as well. Let's go here to this small animation that I'm making. Chicken. I want the background to have fire, so let's get our fire animation. Go to File, Import, Create File Object. Look for our fire animation clip file. Click OK when you're done. Now look here at the side, on mode. Make sure you're on free transform. And now just warp the fire animation so that we could randomize the fire, because we will duplicate this a lot. How I randomize one fire animation will be another topic. And so I just stretch the fire animation so I can get random fire shapes. And when we play that, we get random fires. Some are big, some are small, and it's still moving. Okay. Next is flip horizontal and flip vertical. You won't find them here on this tab. It's right here above on these icons. Flip horizontal and flip vertical. Flip horizontal literally flips it horizontally or side to side. Chicken. Flip vertical flips the image vertically or up to down. You can change the center of rotation or the anchor point to change the position of the flipping. Okay. For example, let's put the center of rotation here at the center top and flip vertical. It flipped from the top and literally went to the other side, right? Okay. So Where do I use flip horizontal and flip vertical? I use this for duplicating eyes. Some people call this cheating, and I'm like, I drew this other one eye though, so yeah, I can draw the other eye, but this saves me time. If I'm just going to do the exact same thing, I duplicate the sketch, but I do the line art separately, just so that it doesn't look too identical to one another. For the flip vertical, I use that for making eye animation. Example, this one, I need a closed eye. So what I do is I grab a selection tool, lasso sub tool, then I grab the upper eyelid and Ctrl X to cut and paste to a new raster layer. Now I click here on the scale rotate shortcut so I can access the transformation setting, and just click here on the flip vertical icon. I just trim or erase this area, make this part clean, and now I have a closed eye that I can use for my animations. Okay, let's begin. Okay, so last one is mesh transform or mesh transformation. You cannot see this on the transformation settings. It's directly on edit, transformation, mesh transform. Okay, so mesh transformation gives you the ability to transform your image using the lattice points. You will still get a transformation setting here on the side exclusively for mesh transform. You can change the amount of lattice points, both horizontal and vertical. Image interpolation is also here if you want to change that. So you just click and drag a point, and that part, only that part, gets warped, and it doesn't affect the other lattice points. Okay? Okay, so where do I use mesh transform? I mainly use this for placing textures on clothes. For example, here on my OC Lila, half of his pants are checkered, so let's get our texture. Open the materials tab, look for the texture, click and drag it to the canvas. Make sure it's clicked on the pants layer or the layer that should have a texture. Change the amount of horizontal and vertical repetition that you want. Now, right click that texture layer, rasterize. Okay, now we clean this up for a bit so that only this part of the leg is the only one that has a texture. Okay, we can now transform this. Go to edit, transform, mesh transform. I'm going to increase the lattice points just so I have more room to warp. And I just click the points and make sure to pay attention on the edges. The edges create the transformation I want to create. Like I want to create this bump or ramp like pattern for the tie, so the edges needs to be like a rainbow or an upside down U. Okay, can you see that? So the pants here on the lower leg is tighter, so make the texture close to each other. And what we're doing is making the lattice points close to one another. So modify it more according to your egg roll. Okay, and when you're done, just click OK, and here we go. This is before and this is after. Okay, so that's all the transform functions on Clip Studio Paint. Please try them out yourself so you can find out what works best for you and what makes your art endeavor more efficient. Okay, so stay safe. Thank you for watching.